Learning objectives. After completing this module, learners will be able to understand and describe why deforestation took place between 1700 to 1995. Understand and explain the causes for increase in plantations in British India. Understand and explain how people were affected by commercial forestry and forest rules. Understand and describe emergence of new trades, employments and services. Understand and describe in detail the causes of rebellion in forests, especially Bastar. Understand and explain forest transformation in Java. Understand and describe how the World Wars contributed to deforestation. Understand and explain the importance of locals in forest management. Forest societies and colonialism. Why deforestation? Forests disappeared very fast between 1700 and 1995, the period of industrialization. It accounts for 9.3% of the world's total area. The disappearance of forests is termed as deforestation. Deforestation, an age-old process, became more widespread and systematic during the colonial rule. Land to be improved. In 1600, only 1/6 of India's land was under cultivation. Today, almost half of the landmass is used for cultivation. People were clearing forest areas for different uses. But during the colonial period, the British encouraged cultivation of commercial crops like jute, cotton, sugar, and wheat to meet their growing demand in Europe. They brought vast forest areas under cultivation to increase agricultural yield, earn more revenue, and increase the state income. Between 1880 and 1920, cultivated area in India rose by 6.7 million hectares. The British felled trees at a massive scale in India to export timber to England. In 1850s, dense forests were cleared to create clear land to lay railway tracks. Trees were also cut in large numbers to provide timber as fuel for locomotives and for sleepers to hold tracks. Plantations. To meet the growing demand for tea, coffee, and rubber, the colonial government cleared forests and sold the land at cheap rates to European planters to develop plantations. The rise of commercial forestry. To manage and conserve forests, the British government invited German expert Dietrich Brandis. He set up the Indian Forest Service in 1864 and formulated the Indian Forest Act of 1865. He established the Imperial Forest Research Institute at Dehradun in 1906. In 1878, an amendment in the Indian Forest Act of 1865 divided forests into reserved, protected, and village forests. The villagers were not allowed to take anything from reserved forests. These were the best forests. They could take wood only from protected or village forests. How were the lives of people affected? According to villagers, an ideal forest has a mixture of plant species to fulfill the needs of food, fodder, fuel, and timber. The forest department, however, promoted only species like teak and sal to ensure uninterrupted supply of timber to fulfill the British demands back home. The Forest Act severely affected the lives of the villagers. They were forced to steal wood from forests and bribe the forest guards if caught. How did the forest rules affect cultivation? Jhum, or shifting cultivation, was a traditional practice of cutting and burning a part of the forest after harvesting. The land was then fallow for a long period. The British feared fire in forests could spread and burn the valuable timber. Shifting cultivation also made it harder for the government to calculate taxes. Hence, they banned it. It forced the locals to leave forests and look for alternative means of livelihood. New trade employment services. Who could hunt? Before the prohibitory forest laws were implemented, people living in or around the forests survived by hunting birds and some small animals. While they were deprived of their right to hunt, it was encouraged as a sport for the Indian nobility and colonial rulers. They killed animals on the pretext of protecting the cultivators from wild animals. New trades, new employments, new services. After the Forest Department took control of the forests, new employment opportunities emerged. Many communities gave up their traditional means of livelihood to trade in forest products. This was a global trend colonies. In Brazil, the Munduruku community started collecting latex from rubber trees to supply to the traders. Trading in forest products was not new to the Adivasi communities in India. They had been trading through nomadic communities or banjaras. They traded in elephants and other goods like hides, horns, silk cocoons, ivory, bamboo, spices, fibers, grasses, gums, and resins. The British government accorded exclusive rights to trade in forest products of particular areas to large European firms. Local people could not graze their cattle or hunt animals in these areas. As a result, many pastoralist and nomadic communities like the Korava, Karacha, and Yerukula of the Madras Presidency began to lose their livelihoods. They were forced to work in factories, mines, and plantations for low wages in poor working conditions. Rebellion in the forest. The people of Bastar. Bastar is the southernmost administrative division of Chhattisgarh. It shares borders with Maharashtra, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, and Odisha. Maria and Muria Gonds, Dhurwas, Bhatras, and Halbas are some communities inhabiting the Bastar forests. They speak different languages but follow common customs and belief system. They believe that they were given land by the earth, and they in return take care of the earth. Besides earth, they have respect for the rivers, mountains, and forests. The fears of the people. In 1905, the people of Bastar rose in rebellion against the colonial government when it proposed to reserve 2/3 of the forest, ban shifting cultivation, hunting, and collecting products from forests. A few villagers were allowed to stay in the reserve forest if they agreed to work in the forests without expecting any wages in return. A large number of people were forced to leave their villages. The famines of 1899 to 1900 and 1907 to 1908 worsened the situation. Reservation first took place in the Kanker forests. The Dhurwas of the Kangar forest were the first ones to rebel against the colonial government. Gunda Dhur from village Nethanar was an important figure of the rebellion. The efforts to negotiate by the Adivasi leaders failed. Their rebellion was suppressed by the British, though in a period of 3 months. The Adivasis achieved partial victory as the reservation work was temporarily stopped, and the area proposed to be reserved earlier was reduced to half. Forest transformation in Java. The woodcutters of Java. The Kalangs of Java, a community of skilled forest cutters and shifting cultivators, rose in rebellion against the Dutch colonizers who took control of the forests and forced the Kalangs to work under them. Unfortunately, their uprising was suppressed. Dutch scientific forestry. The new forest laws introduced by the Dutch colonizers restricted entry of villagers in forests. They cleared forests to obtain timber for railway sleepers and shipbuilding. They evolved a system known as the Blandong-Deinstein system to obtain free-of-cost labor. The villagers were later on given smaller wages, but their right to cultivate forest land was taken away. Samin's challenge. Around 1890, Surontiko Samin, a teak forest villager, questioned state ownership of the forest. His movement spread fast. When the Dutch came to survey their village, his followers protested by lying down on their land, refusing to pay taxes or fines or perform labor. War and deforestation. Trees were recklessly cut down to meet war needs during World War I and World War II. Prior to Japanese occupation of Java, the Dutch destroyed sawmills and burnt huge piles of teak logs so that the Japanese would not use them. The Japanese then forced the villagers to fell trees to meet the needs of their war industries. Summary. Let us summarize what we have learned. Forests disappeared very fast between 1700 and 1995, the period of industrialization. The British felled trees at a massive scale in India to export timber to England and lay railway tracks in India. An amendment in the Indian Forest Act of 1865 divided forests into reserved, protected and village forests. The Forest Act severely affected the lives of the villagers. A ban on jhum or shifting cultivation forced the locals to leave forests and look for alternative means of livelihood. Forest dwellers were deprived of their right to hunt, but Indian nobility and the colonial rulers could engage in hunting as a sport. New employment opportunities emerged after the Forest Department took control of the forests. In 1905, the people of Bastar rose in rebellion against the colonial government when it proposed various bans on use of forest and method of cultivation. The Adivasis achieved partial victory in their rebellion. The uprising of Kalanga, the woodcutters of Java, was suppressed. The Dutch colonists